Queen Elizabeth I wasn't just a queen, she was a walking legend. She called herself the Virgin Queen, wore fancy dresses covered in jewels, and ruled with a sharp mind and strong hand. People remember her for her powerful court, beating the Spanish Armada, and making England a strong Protestant country. But behind all that beauty and power, under the thick makeup and shiny pearls, was a woman full of fear, pride, and obsession. She cared deeply about how others saw her, and when it came to staying clean, things got really strange. Back then, hygiene wasn't about staying healthy, it was about looking good, and Queen Elizabeth turned it into a kind of performance. She thought water could make her sick. She was so afraid of getting old, she treated her body like something sacred, something that couldn't be touched by time, or even by soap. In this video, we'll show you 5 of the weirdest and most shocking things Queen Elizabeth I did to stay clean. And the last one, you won't believe it. Elizabeth had a powerful addiction. Sugar. At the time, sugar was not something everyone could afford. It was rare, expensive, and came all the way from far-off lands. Most people might never taste it in their lifetime. But for the Queen of England, it was everywhere. She didn't just enjoy sweets, she drowned in them. Her royal meals included candied violets, sugar-covered fruits, sweet almond marzipan, and desserts soaked in syrup. To have sugar was to show off your status. Elizabeth didn't just eat it, she used it to show off England's growing power and wealth. But here's the shocking truth. This sweet obsession came with a terrible cost. In the 1500s, dental care was primitive. Toothbrushes were rough and most people cleaned their teeth with twigs, rags, or crushed eggshells. The Queen, however, had her own special mix, a homemade toothpaste made of sugar and herbs. Yes, sugar. The very thing rotting her teeth was the same thing she used to try to clean them. To make it worse, she also used gritty powders that scratched away her tooth enamel. Over time, her once royal smile turned into something shocking. Foreign visitors noticed it. By the 1590s, her teeth were black, broken, or missing entirely. Her breath was said to be so foul it made people around her physically uncomfortable. And sometimes her words were hard to understand because she was speaking through a mouth of rot. Yet she refused to let doctors pull them out. Elizabeth was known to be stubborn and terrified of pain. To convince her it wasn't deadly, one of her courtiers even volunteered to have a tooth pulled in front of her. Imagine that, someone willingly screaming in agony just to get the Queen to open her mouth. But perhaps the strangest part was what happened next. Rather than mock her decaying teeth, the noblewomen in her court copied them. That's right, they blackened their own teeth with soot and charcoal to match the Queen's look. In her court, even tooth decay became a symbol of class. If the Queen had black teeth, then black teeth meant beauty, power, and wealth. The darker your smile, the richer you must be. In a world where everything the Queen did became fashion, even rotting teeth became desirable. That's the power of royalty. You may have heard the shocking quote, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not." Some say Queen Elizabeth I really said it. Others say it's just a legend. But either way, it shows how people thought about cleanliness in the 1500s and how strange it was compared to today. Back then, water was seen as dangerous. People believed it could carry illness, weaken the body, and let in bad air, something they called miasma. This invisible poison was blamed for spreading deadly diseases like the plague. To many, taking a bath wasn't healthy. It was risky. So Queen Elizabeth avoided it. Instead of washing with soap and water, she had a different routine. She would change her linen underclothes, called shifts, sometimes several times a day. People believed that the soft fabric pulled sweat, dirt, and toxins out of the skin. No water needed, just fresh fabric. When she did freshen up, she used rose water, vinegar, or herbal mixes made by her royal apothecaries. These were gently dabbed onto her skin by handmaids. It was a slow, careful ritual, not for hygiene but for appearances. Her body was treated more like a sacred object than a human one. It had to stay perfect at all costs. Why not just take a real bath? Because that was no small task. Her palaces had no plumbing, no running water. If she wanted a bath, it meant dragging out a giant wooden tub, heating dozens of buckets of water, and calling in at least 3 servants to pour, stir, and prepare. It was like planning a royal ceremony. Bathing was a luxury, not a habit, and yet people called her clean. She wore hundreds of gowns made of fine silk and velvet. She smelled like flowers and spices. She kept perfumed gloves, scented handkerchiefs, and demanded her appearance be flawless from head to toe. But all of this created an illusion of cleanliness, not real sanitation. There was no scrubbing, no rinsing, no soap. Elizabeth didn't avoid bathing because she was dirty or lazy. She avoided it because too much reality could ruin her perfect image. Water could smudge her white makeup. It could soften the illusion. It could make her human. And in her mind, a queen was not supposed to be human. Queen Elizabeth's face is one of the most famous in history, white as porcelain, smooth like a statue, and cold as stone. But that wasn't her real skin. It was a mask, carefully painted every day, not for beauty, but for power. In her time, pale skin meant wealth, class, and even a sign from God. The whiter you were, the higher you stood. So the queen took it to the extreme. She didn't just wear makeup, she used it to build a myth, a perfect version of herself that could never grow old or weak. Her favourite product, Venetian ceruse, a deadly mix of white lead and vinegar. It created a flawless look, hiding every blemish, scar, and shadow, but underneath, it was eating her alive. This poison soaked into her skin, causing rashes, open sores, and long-term scarring. As her real face was slowly destroyed, she simply added more layers of makeup, thicker and thicker, until her appearance became a frozen mask. But it didn't stop there. For her lips, she used bright red colours made from mercury, one of the most toxic substances on Earth. The more she used it, the sicker she became. Her mood changed, her memory faded, her body weakened, her hands sometimes trembled. These are classic signs of mercury poisoning, and the queen had no idea she was poisoning herself every time she painted her face. So why keep doing it? Because her face didn't just belong to her, it belonged to England. Her image was her power. It made her seem ageless, godlike, untouchable. She didn't allow painters to show her real features. Instead, artists had to use official face patterns, copied from younger portraits. No matter how old she got, her paintings stayed the same. Youthful, perfect, eternal. She even refused to be seen in natural light. Candles and shadows helped hide the truth. In her final years, her face became so delicate, people whispered that touching it could cause the makeup to crack and fall apart. She barely washed her face. Why would she? Washing it meant wiping away the illusion and revealing a fragile, aging woman beneath the mask of the Virgin Queen. Did she know the makeup was killing her? Historians still debate it, but one thing is clear. She chose the mask over her health. She was willing to destroy her body to keep the legend of Gloriana alive. To truly understand Queen Elizabeth Hygiene, you need to understand her deepest fear, losing control. Every inch of her body, her painted face, perfumed gloves, and carefully chosen scents was not just about looking good, it was about holding power and hiding weakness. In her time, bathing wasn't just rare, it was risky. People believed water could carry disease, and bathing meant exposing your body, both physically and symbolically. It was seen as soft, intimate, even dangerous. And Elizabeth, who had witnessed her mother Anne Boleyn be destroyed by the court, would not allow herself to appear fragile. To her, a naked body was a vulnerable body, so she avoided water and built a new form of cleanliness, one made of perfume and ritual. Every day, she surrounded herself with strong, sweet smells. Her maids prepared rose water, lavender oil, vinegar infusions, and herbal mixtures brewed in the palace's still rooms. These liquids weren't meant to clean the skin. They were meant to cover odor and create the illusion of freshness. A few drops behind the ears, a wipe on the wrists, a fragrant handkerchief tucked in her sleeve, and she would drift through her court like a walking flower garden, untouched by human scent. She carried pomanders, small ornate bowls filled with herbs and resins, hidden in her dress or worn on her belt. Whenever a foul odor crept too close, she would lift one to her nose and breathe in the controlled world she had built. These objects weren't just for comfort, they were a clear message. I am not like you. I do not stink like the rest of the world. Even her clothing was part of the performance. Her gloves were perfumed, her handkerchiefs soaked in oils, and her dresses layered and stiff, designed to hide her body and trap scent. She was known to give out scented gloves to her courtiers, a gift that didn't come from her skin, but from her image. And as for her hair, it was rarely washed. Washing it was seen as dangerous, especially for someone who wore so much makeup. Instead, her real hair was stiffened with sugar water and egg whites, then powdered. As she aged and began to lose hair, likely from years of lead and mercury poisoning, she switched to wigs, especially auburn ones, to keep up her image. But underneath all that powder and perfume, her body was falling apart. Years of toxic makeup had left her skin scarred, thin and blistered. Rumors spread of peeling skin, open sores, and a face too damaged to touch. And yet she kept painting it, thicker and thicker. She even banned mirrors from her private rooms. No one was allowed to see the truth, not even herself. It said she had a servant whose only job was to powder her shoulders in private, to make sure no one ever saw her real skin. Elizabeth had become a prisoner of her own illusion. Bathing wasn't just skipped because it was hard. It was skipped because it meant wiping away the mask. To wash the body was to admit it was aging, cracking, human. And Elizabeth had spent her whole life convincing the world she was more than human. In her final years, she carried a scented walking stick. When passing smelly courtiers, she would raise it to her nose, not just to block the odor, but to remind everyone, "I am the queen. I do not belong to your world." Her body was no longer just flesh and bone. It was the symbol of the crown. It had to stay perfect, even if it meant sacrificing the truth underneath. To Elizabeth, cleanliness was not about being healthy. It was about staying untouchable. From the outside, Queen Elizabeth I's palaces looked like heaven on earth. Massive stone walls, golden ceilings, velvet carpets, and halls filled with music and silk. But take one step past the royal image and you'd find something far less glamorous. There were no toilets, no sinks, no plumbing. That's right, behind all the beauty, the Queen lived in a world that smelled like a sewer. Her most private toilet was a fancy wooden chair called a close stool. It looked elegant on the outside, but under the cushion was just a ceramic pot for collecting waste. It had to be emptied by hand, cleaned, and perfumed multiple times a day. And it wasn't done by a servant. It was done by someone with royal power, the groom of the stool. Don't let the job title fool you. This man was no janitor. He was a trusted noble, chosen for loyalty and secrecy. He didn't just help the Queen use the toilet, he also helped her get dressed, manage private matters, and sometimes even shared secret political conversations. In the strange world of the Tudor court, being close to the Queen during her most personal moments meant being close to power. But the rest of the palace? Far more disgusting. There were no flushing toilets, just chamber pots, buckets or bowls for waste, used by everyone. These were dumped into cesspits hidden beneath floors or just outside palace walls. The job of cleaning all this waste fell to men called gong farmers or night soil men. They worked at night, carrying buckets of human waste through dark hallways and narrow stairs, trying not to spill as they emptied the filth into open trenches. The smell was awful, and it never really went away. To cover it up, the palace burned herbs like lavender, rosemary, and sweet marjoram. People sprinkled flowers on the floors and laid down straw or rushes, soaked in oils, to try to trap the odor. But these rushes weren't cleaned often. Dirt, hair, crumbs, and rot built up underneath, creating a hidden layer of filth. Even the Queen couldn't escape the stink. She moved her court from palace to palace, not just for politics, but to escape the smell. The longer she stayed in one place, the worse the waste problem became. No amount of perfume could hide the truth forever. This was the true face of royal life, a world of gold and velvet on the outside, but decay and disease underneath. A place where power sat beside filth, where the most powerful woman in England lived in constant battle with the smell of her own kingdom. Queen Elizabeth didn't rule by accident. She ruled with strategy, style, and smoke and mirrors. Her hygiene wasn't lazy, it was intentional. Every skipped bath, every drop of rosewater, every powdered wig was part of a grand performance. In a world where a woman's strength could be torn apart in a single rumour, Elizabeth made herself into something untouchable, ageless, and beyond human. She knew the truth. To bathe was to risk the mask. Water could wash away her power. A bare face might invite judgment. A real, aging body could destroy the illusion she had spent decades perfecting. So instead, she powdered, she perfumed, she painted, she posed, and she became a legend. Elizabeth I may not have been clean by today's standards, but she was flawless by design. In her world, soap and water were not tools of health. They were threats to power. She didn't just survive, she mastered the art of being seen without being known. In the end, her true cleanliness was not on her skin, it was in her image, and for a queen, image was everything.